The injured stallion reared back violently, eyes wild with pain and fear, refusing anyone's touch. Veterinarians had given up, declaring him a lost cause. Then, a young girl stepped forward, placed her hands on the horse's wounded leg, and something extraordinary happened. Within minutes, the horse that everyone had deemed untreatable was standing calmly, his injury beginning to heal in ways that defied medical explanation. There's something special about Sarah. The autumn sun cast long shadows across Silver Creek Equestrian Center, where dozens of concerned faces pressed against the fence of the quarantine paddock. Inside, a magnificent black stallion named Thunder lay on his side, his powerful body trembling with pain. The horse's rear leg, badly injured in a competition accident 2 weeks ago, had refused to heal despite the best efforts of multiple veterinarians. Sarah Chen stood quietly among the onlookers, her dark eyes fixed intently on Thunder. At 15, she was younger than most of the gathered crowd of horse trainers, veterinarians, and stable hands, but there was something in her steady gaze that set her apart. Her mother, Dr. Linda Chen, one of the region's most respected equine veterinarians, noticed her daughter's expression with a mixture of concern and understanding. "Sarah," Dr. Chen whispered, placing a gentle hand on her daughter's shoulder. "I know that look. But this isn't like helping the neighbor's pony with a sprained ankle. Thunder's injury is severe. The infection is spreading, and he's not responding to any treatment." Sarah nodded slowly, her eyes never leaving the suffering animal. "I know, Mom, but there's something about him. Something calling out to me, just like with the others." The others, her mother knew well. Since Sarah was 12, strange things had happened whenever she touched injured horses. It started with their elderly mare, Buttercup, whose arthritic joints mysteriously improved after Sarah spent an afternoon grooming her. Then came the neighbor's horse with inexplicable colic, who recovered minutes after Sarah sat with him. Each time, Sarah emerged exhausted but fulfilled, and the horses healed in ways that defied conventional medicine. Dr. Chen had spent years trying to understand her daughter's gift, running tests, documenting cases, and seeking scientific explanations. But science had no answers for why her teenage daughter could heal horses with a simple touch, or why each healing left Sarah drained and feverish for days afterward. "He's getting worse," someone in the crowd murmured. Thunder's owner, Alexandra Sterling, a nationally ranked show jumper, wiped tears from her eyes as she watched her prized stallion suffer. The horse had been her partner in countless victories, their bond legendary in competition circuits. Now she faced the heartbreaking possibility of having to euthanize him. "We've tried everything," Dr. James Morton, the lead veterinarian, announced grimly. "The infection is resistant to all antibiotics. The tissue damage is extensive. Even if we could control the infection, the leg will never heal properly. He's suffering and—" He paused, his voice heavy with resignation. "I recommend we discuss humane options." A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Thunder wasn't just any horse. He was a champion, valued at over $2 million, with a bloodline that traced back to some of the greatest racing stallions in history. More than that, he was beloved by everyone at Silver Creek. Sarah felt her heart race as she stepped forward. She knew what would happen if she helped. The exhaustion, the fever, the questions she couldn't answer. Her mother's grip tightened on her shoulder, but Sarah had already made her decision. "Miss Sterling," Sarah called out, her voice steady, despite her pounding heart. "Please let me try something." Alexandra turned, her tear-stained face questioning. Dr. Morton frowned. "Young lady, this is a serious situation. We've had every specialist from 3 states examine him." "I know," Sarah replied, meeting his skeptical gaze. "But I've helped horses before. Please just give me a few minutes with him. What do you have to lose?" Dr. Chen stepped forward, her professional reputation warring with her knowledge of her daughter's gift. James, I know this sounds unusual, but I've seen Sarah work with injured horses. There's no risk to Thunder, and, given the situation... The gathered crowd watched in tense silence as Dr. Morton considered the request. Finally, Alexandra... Sterling spoke up, her voice rough with emotion. Let her try. Please. I can't bear to give up on him without trying everything. As Sarah climbed through the fence, her mother's whispered warning followed her. Be careful, honey. This is bigger than anything you've tried before. The crowd pressed closer as Sarah approached Thunder slowly, her movements deliberate and calm. The massive stallion's eyes rolled white with pain and fear, his powerful body trembling. Even injured, he could kill her with a single kick if startled. Easy, boy, Sarah murmured, her voice barely audible to the watching crowd. I know you're hurting. I know you're scared. But I'm here to help, if you'll let me. Thunder's ears flicked toward her voice, and for a moment, the trembling in his body stilled. Sarah moved closer, her hand extended, waiting. The horse's nostrils flared, taking in her scent. Then, ever so slightly, he lowered his head. As Sarah placed her hands on Thunder's injured leg, nobody could have predicted how this moment would change not just the horse's life, but the entire world of equine medicine forever. The gift that had been her secret was about to become something much bigger than she had ever imagined. The watching crowd had no way of knowing they were about to witness something that would challenge everything they thought they knew about. Healing, about the bond between humans and animals, and about a young girl whose extraordinary ability would soon make headlines around the world. Time seemed to stand still as Sarah knelt beside Thunder, her hands hovering over his injured leg. The infection had turned the skin angry and hot, with visible swelling that stretched from hoof to knee. Even the gentlest touch caused the mighty stallion to flinch, his muscles quivering beneath his sweat-dampened coat. This is ridiculous, Dr. Morton muttered, just loud enough for the crowd to hear. We're wasting precious time when we should be making difficult but necessary decisions. He stepped forward, medical kit in hand, but Dr. Chen raised her arm to stop him. Wait, she said firmly, her eyes fixed on her daughter. Just wait. Sarah blocked out the whispers and doubts surrounding her, focusing entirely on Thunder. She could feel it now. The familiar tingling in her palms, the slight buzzing sensation that always preceded what she was about to do. But this was different. The injury was far worse than anything she'd encountered before, and she could sense Thunder's pain as if it were her own. I know you're hurting, she whispered, her voice for Thunder's ears alone. But I need you to trust me. Slowly, deliberately, she placed both hands on his leg, just above the worst of the infection. The reaction was immediate and violent. Thunder jerked away with a sharp whinny of pain, his massive body thrashing. Several people screamed as his hooves lashed out, missing Sarah by inches. Dr. Morton rushed forward, but Sarah didn't move. Stay back, she called out, her voice stronger than anyone expected. He's scared, not aggressive. Please, everyone just stay back. Alexandra Sterling gripped the fence, her knuckles white. Sarah, maybe this isn't... Trust her, Dr. Chen interrupted, though her own face was pale with concern. This is what she does. Sarah began humming softly, a gentle, melodic sound that seemed to catch Thunder's attention. His ears swiveled toward her, and his frantic movements slowly calmed. The melody was one she'd used before, something that had come to her naturally during her first healing, as if the music itself was part of her gift. That's it, she murmured between notes. You're so strong. You fought so hard. Let me help. You now. Again she reached for his leg, but this time Thunder didn't pull away. The crowd watched in tense silence as Sarah's hands made contact with the injured limb. What happened next would be described dozens of different ways by those who witnessed it, but none could fully capture the extraordinary scene that unfolded. A soft gasp escaped Sarah's lips as the connection formed. Those standing closest would later swear they saw a faint shimmer in the air around her hands, like heat waves rising from summer pavement. Thunder's breathing, which had been rapid and shallow, began to slow and deepen. Dr. Morton squinted, leaning forward despite his skepticism. "The swelling," he muttered. That's impossible." Under Sarah's touch, the angry inflammation began to visibly reduce. The heat beneath. Her palms intensified until sweat beaded on her forehead, but she didn't break contact. Thunder's skin, which had been stretched tight and shiny with infection, slowly began to return to its normal texture. "Linda," Dr. Morton called out, his voice shaking slightly. "Are you seeing this?" Dr. Chen nodded silently, already pulling out her phone to document what was happening. She'd seen Sarah heal before, but never anything this dramatic, never this visible. The transformation happening before their eyes defied every medical principle she knew. Minutes stretched by like hours. Sarah's breathing became labored, and her hands began to tremble, but still she persisted. Thunder stood perfectly still now, his head lowered, as if he understood the importance of what was happening. "Sarah," her mother called out, noting her daughter's increasing pallor. "That's enough for now. You need to stop." But Sarah shook her head. "Not yet," she whispered. "Almost done." The crowd gasped as Thunder suddenly shifted his weight, testing his injured leg. The stallion, that hadn't been able to put any pressure on the limb for days, took a tentative step. Then another. There was still a slight favor to his gait, but the improvement was nothing short of miraculous. Finally, Sarah's hands fell away from Thunder's leg, and she swayed slightly where she knelt. Alexandra Sterling vaulted over the fence, rushing to examine her horse in disbelief. Dr. Morton followed close behind, medical kit ready. "The infection," he announced after a quick examination, his voice filled with disbelief. It's almost completely gone. The tissue is healing at an impossible rate. I've never seen anything like this." Sarah barely heard them. The world was spinning now, darkness creeping at the edges of her vision. She felt her mother's strong arms catch her as she slumped backward, her energy completely drained. "Easy, honey," Dr. Chen murmured, cradling her daughter. "I've got you." Through blurry vision, Sarah watched as Thunder walked the length of the paddock, each step stronger than the last. A small smile crossed her face before exhaustion overtook her completely. She had done it. She had saved him. But as she drifted into unconsciousness, Sarah had no way of knowing that this very public display of her gift would change everything. The video already uploading to someone's social media would soon go viral, and the quiet life she had known would vanish as quickly as Thunder's injury had healed. Sarah awoke to the steady beeping of hospital monitors and the worried face of her mother hovering above her. The sterile white walls of the emergency room were a stark contrast to the earthy paddock where she'd collapsed. Her whole body ached, as if she'd run a marathon, and her hands still tingled with residual energy from healing Thunder. "How long was I out?" she mumbled, trying to sit up despite her mother's gentle, restraining hand. "Almost 6 hours, Dr. Chen replied, concern etched in her features. "Your fever peaked at 104. The doctors wanted to admit you, but I convinced them it would pass. It always does." Sarah nodded weakly, then suddenly remembered. "Thunder, is he—" "The stallion is fine," a new voice interrupted. Dr. Morton stood in the doorway, his earlier skepticism replaced by intense curiosity. "More than fine, actually. Well, you should see for yourself." He held up his tablet, showing a video of Thunder in his paddock. The stallion was trotting freely, his previously infected leg moving almost normally. The angry swelling had disappeared entirely, replaced by healthy tissue that should have taken weeks or months to heal. "I've sent tissue samples to 3 different labs," Dr. Morton continued, his voice tight with controlled excitement. "The infection is completely gone. The regeneration rate of the muscle and skin cells is unprecedented. Sarah, what you did, It defies everything we know about veterinary medicine. Sarah shifted uncomfortably under his scrutinizing gaze. She'd always kept her gift relatively secret, healing horses quietly, away from prying eyes. But this time had been different. There had been witnesses, dozens of them, with phones and cameras. As if reading her thoughts, her mother spoke up. "Honey, there's something you should know." She picked up her own phone, pulled up a social media app, and turned it towards Sarah. The video already had over 2 million views. The caption read, "Miracle at Silver Creek. Girl heals dying horse with her hands." Comments were pouring in by the thousands, ranging from amazement to skepticism to demands for explanation. Sarah's stomach churned as she scrolled through the responses. "That's not all," Dr. Morton added, his professional demeanor cracking with excitement. "Every major news outlet in the country has been calling. Research institutions are reaching out. Alexandra Sterling's agent has been fielding requests for interviews non-stop." "I don't want interviews," Sarah protested weakly. "I just wanted to help Thunder." "Sweetheart," her mother said gently, "I don't think we have a choice anymore. What you can do, it could revolutionize veterinary medicine. Think of all the animals you could help." Before Sarah could respond, a commotion erupted in the hospital hallway. Through the door's window, she could see security guards trying to hold back a crowd of reporters and cameras. The secret was well and truly out. "Dr. Chen," a voice called from the hallway. "The hospital administrator needs to speak with you immediately. The press is demanding statements, and we have protocols about media in the building." Sarah's mother squeezed her hand reassuringly. "Rest for a few more minutes. I'll handle this." She turned to Dr. Morton. "James, stay with her?" As her mother left to deal with the chaos, Sarah's phone buzzed with a message. It was from Alexandra Sterling, accompanied by a photo of Thunder looking bright and alert. "He's perfect. You didn't just save his life, you saved mine too. Whatever happens next, I've got your back." Dr. Morton cleared his throat. "Sarah, I owe you an apology. I was wrong to dismiss you earlier, but now I have to ask, how long have you been able to do this?" Sarah looked down at her hands, still tingling with residual energy. "Since I was 12. It started with our old mare, Buttercup. She was in so much pain from arthritis, and I wanted to help. When I touched her, something happened. It was like I could feel her pain, and then somehow, I could take it away. And the exhaustion afterward, the fever. Every time. The worse the injury, the harder it hits me. This was the worst so far." Dr. Morton nodded, making notes on his tablet. "The energy has to come from somewhere. Basic laws of physics. You're not creating healing. You're transferring energy, your own body's energy." His eyes lit up with scientific curiosity. "If we could understand the mechanism, quantify it, maybe find a way to support your system during the process." "Doctor," Sarah interrupted, her voice stronger now, "I appreciate that you want to study this. Everyone's going to want to study it. But right now I just want to go home and see Thunder." A small smile crossed Dr. Morton's face. "Of course. But Sarah, what you did today, it's going to change everything. Not just for veterinary medicine, but for our understanding of what's possible. Are you ready for that?" Before she could answer, her mother returned, looking flustered but determined. "The news has reached every major network. We need to make some decisions quickly. The hospital can't keep the media at bay much longer, and people are already gathering at Silver Creek." Sarah looked between her mother and Dr. Morton, then down at her phone, still buzzing with notifications. The comfortable anonymity of her life had vanished in the space of a few hours. Whatever came next would be challenging, frightening, and completely beyond her control. But then she looked at the photo of Thunder, standing strong and healthy against all odds, and found her resolve. If going public with her gift meant she could help more horses, maybe it would be worth facing the storm that was coming. Okay, she said finally, swinging her legs off the hospital bed. Let's go see Thunder first. Then we can figure out how to handle the rest. As she stood, steadied by her mother's arm, Sarah couldn't know that this was just the beginning. The simple act of helping one horse would spark a journey that would challenge not just her abilities, but everything the world thought it knew about the connection between humans and animals. The drive back to Silver Creek felt surreal. Police cars had to clear a path through the crowd of reporters and curious onlookers gathered at the entrance. Camera flashes burst like lightning as Sarah's mother's car passed through the gates, and dozens of voices called out questions that were muffled by the closed windows. "Don't worry," Dr. Chen assured her daughter, noting Sarah's pale face. "Security won't let them onto the property." But it wasn't just the media causing chaos. The parking lot was filled with horse trailers, and people lined the paddock fences, with sick or injured horses in tow. They had come from all over the state, drawn by the viral video and desperate for Sarah's help. "Oh no," Sarah whispered, seeing the hopeful faces of horse owners and their suffering animals. The weight of their expectations pressed down on her chest, making it hard to breathe. She was still weak from healing Thunder, and the sight of so many animals in need overwhelmed her. Alexandra Sterling met them at the barn's side entrance, helping Sarah slip in unnoticed. Inside, Thunder's stall had become a makeshift command center, with Alexandra's PR team managing the flood of calls and media requests. "It's absolutely insane," Alexandra explained, leading them to where Thunder stood peacefully in his stall. "The video has over 10 million views now. Every major news network is running the story. Miracle Girl is trending worldwide." Sarah moved to Thunder's stall, drawing strength from his calm presence. The stallion lowered his head to her, nickering softly in recognition. His leg, which just yesterday had been on the verge of requiring amputation, now showed only the faintest signs of the injury. "Emma Jang from BuzzFeed just posted a deep dive article," one of Alexandra's team members announced, looking up from her laptop. "They found videos of other horses Sarah's helped. That old mare with arthritis, the neighbor's colic case. People who saw those healings are coming forward." Dr. Chen's phone buzzed continuously with messages from colleagues worldwide. "The veterinary community is in an uproar," she said, scanning the texts. "Half of them are calling it a hoax. The other half are demanding scientific studies." "Speaking of science," Alexandra added, pulling up an email on her tablet. "Dr. Elizabeth Warner from the Institute of Paranormal Research wants to fly in tomorrow. She specializes in documented cases of unexplained healing abilities." Sarah stroked Thunder's neck, trying to ground herself in the familiar sensation of horsehair beneath her fingers. "Mom, what do we do? All those people out there with their horses. I want to help, but I can barely stand right now." Before Dr. Chen could respond, Alexandra's phone lit up with a news alert. Everyone fell silent as she read it aloud. "Breaking. Millionaire tech entrepreneur Ryan Martinez offers $5 million for exclusive rights to study and document the miracle horse healer's abilities." "Absolutely not," Dr. Chen said firmly. But Sarah barely heard her. Through the barn's window she could see a horse being unloaded from a trailer, a beautiful paint pony supported by slings, its back legs clearly paralyzed. A young girl about 8 years old stood nearby, tears streaming down her face as she watched her beloved pony struggle. "Sarah, no," her mother warned, recognizing the look in her daughter's eyes. "You're not strong enough yet." "Mom, I have to do something," Sarah protested. "We can't just send them all away." Alexandra stepped forward, her business instincts kicking in. "What if we organized it, set up a proper system? We could have veterinarians screen cases, document everything scientifically. Your mom could monitor your health. Make sure you don't push too hard." Thunder nudged Sarah's shoulder gently, as if adding his own encouragement. She looked up at her mother, seeing the worry warring with pride in her eyes. "The world knows about you now," Dr. Chen said softly. "We can't change that, but we can control how we handle it." Sarah's phone buzzed with another message. Video from her best friend Katie, showing their high school's reaction to her sudden fame. Students gathered around phones and tablets, watching the viral video over and over. Some were skeptical, others amazed. But all of them were talking about the quiet girl they'd never really noticed before. "I just wanted to help Thunder," Sarah whispered, overwhelmed by how quickly her life had changed. "And you did," Alexandra assured her, gesturing to the healthy stallion. "Now you have a chance to help so many others. But this time, you don't have to do it alone." Through the window, more trailers arrived. More desperate faces looked toward the barn. News vans lined the street, their satellite dishes reaching toward the sky like mechanical trees. Drones buzzed overhead, trying to capture footage of the miracle horse healer in action. Sarah's world had exploded into chaos, but as she stood there in Thunder's stall, her hand resting on his warm neck, she felt a strange sense of purpose settling over her. Yes, everything had changed, but maybe Alexandra was right. Maybe with the right support, with proper organization and scientific documentation, her gift could become something bigger than herself. "Okay," she said finally, straightening her shoulders, despite her exhaustion. "Let's do this right. But first..." She looked toward the window, toward the paint pony and its crying owner. "First, I need to help that little girl's horse." As Sarah stepped out of the barn and into her new reality, she couldn't know that this was just the beginning. The viral video that had exposed her gift to the world would soon seem like a tiny ripple compared to the waves she was about to create in the fields of veterinary medicine, paranormal research, and humanity's understanding of the bond between humans and animals. The paint pony's recovery had been captured by dozens of phones, and within hours, this second miracle had gone viral alongside the first. Sarah had managed to help the paralyzed horse regain movement in its back legs, though the effort had sent her back to the hospital for another day of observation. Now, a week after the original Thunder incident, she sat in her family's living room watching Dr. Victoria Reynolds, a prominent veterinary researcher, tear apart everything she'd done on national television. "What we're seeing is dangerous and irresponsible," Dr. Reynolds declared, her stern face filling the screen. "These viral videos are giving desperate people false hope. There is no scientific basis for spontaneous tissue regeneration or instant neural recovery. If this girl actually has any effect on these horses, it's more likely she's using some form of drug or unauthorized treatment that could be causing long-term damage." Sarah's hands trembled as she watched. Beside her, Dr. Chen was already typing out angry responses to colleagues who were sharing the interview. Alexandra Sterling's PR team had advised them not to respond publicly yet, but the damage was spreading rapidly through the veterinary community. "Look at this," Katie said from where she sat cross-legged on the floor, scrolling through her phone. "They're calling you the Silver Creek scammer on Twitter. There's a whole thread analyzing the videos, claiming they're doctored." "But they're not," Sarah protested. "There were dozens of witnesses. Dr. Morton has all the medical records, the before and after tests." She was interrupted by a sharp knock at the door. Dr. Chen opened it to find two stern-faced men in suits. "Dr. Linda Chen, I'm Agent Roberts with the FDA. We need to speak with you and your daughter about unauthorized veterinary treatments and potential violations of medical regulations." The color drained from Sarah's face. Her mother stepped forward, steel in her voice. "My daughter hasn't violated any regulations. Everything she's done has been under proper veterinary supervision." "Nevertheless," the second agent said, producing documents, "we have a formal investigation request from the American Veterinary Medical Association. There are concerns about unregistered therapeutic practices and potential harm to animals." While the adults argued in the entryway, Sarah's phone lit up with a message from Alexandra. "Turn on Channel 7 now." The local news was running a different kind of expose. A former classmate, Jessica Mills, was being interviewed outside their high school. "Sarah's always been weird about horses," Jessica was saying, her rehearsed concern feeling fake even through the screen. "Last year my cousin's horse got sick right after she helped at the stable. Nobody could prove anything, but the insinuation hung in the air, toxic and deliberate. Sarah felt sick. Jessica had bullied her for years, and now she was using this moment to continue her campaign. "That's it," Katie declared, jumping up. "I'm posting the video of Jessica begging you to help her horse last spring. Let's see how she likes being exposed as a liar." "No," Sarah said quietly, though her voice shook. "Fighting back will just make it worse." Her phone buzzed again, this time with a message from Thunder's stable. The comments had gone beyond social media. Someone had spray-painted fraud across the Silver Creek Equestrian Center's sign, and several horse owners had withdrawn from the facility, fearing association with the controversy. Dr. Chen finally got rid of the FDA agents with promises of full cooperation and documentation, but the damage was done. As she closed the door, she turned to Sarah with worry etched on her face. "Honey, maybe we should consider that offer from the Research Institute. If we had proper scientific validation—" "No, Mom," Sarah interrupted, standing up. "I won't let them turn me into a lab rat. The horses are what matter, not proving anything to anyone." As if to underscore her point, her phone chimed with yet another message. This one was different. A private video from the little girl whose paint pony she'd helped. The horse was trotting freely in a paddock, the child on its back, both of them radiating joy. "Thank you for giving me my best friend back," the message read. But before Sarah could draw comfort from this moment, Katie gasped, staring at her screen. Oh no. Dr. Reynolds had just posted a new video, this time with even more damaging claims. She had testimonies from veterinarians claiming that horses Sarah had healed were now showing signs of accelerated tissue degradation. The implications were clear. Whatever Sarah was doing, they suggested, was causing more harm than good. "That's impossible," Dr. Chen said, reading over Katie's shoulder. "We have all the follow-up tests. Thunder is perfectly fine. The paint pony is thriving." "It doesn't matter," Sarah whispered, watching her gift transform from miracle to menace in the public eye. "They're going to keep coming after me until—" She trailed off as a new message appeared, this one from Dr. James Morton. "Sarah, we need to talk. Some of my colleagues are reporting unusual findings in the tissue samples from Thunder's leg. I think you need to see this." The walls seemed to close in around her. In just a week, she'd gone from anonymous teenager to miracle worker to potential fraud and danger to animals. But as she looked at the photo of the happy girl and her healed pony, Sarah knew she couldn't give up. Her gift was real. The healings were real. Now she just had to find a way to prove it, not for herself, but for all the horses still waiting for her help. "Mom," she said finally, her voice finding strength. "Call Dr. Morton. If they want science, let's give them science. But we do this our way." What Sarah didn't know was that across the country, in a secretive research facility, someone else was watching events unfold with intense interest. Someone who knew exactly what Sarah's gift was, because they'd seen it before, decades ago, and had spent years trying to recreate it through less natural means. For them, Sarah wasn't a fraud or a miracle worker. She was the key they'd been waiting for. Dr. Morton's office at Silver Creek was crowded with medical charts and tissue sample reports when Sarah and her mother arrived. But it wasn't the paperwork that immediately caught Sarah's attention. It was the elderly woman sitting quietly in the corner, her silver hair tied back in a neat braid, her weathered hands folded carefully in her lap. "Sarah, Dr. Chen," Dr. Morton began, "I'd like you to meet Dr. Margaret Blackwood." The woman stood with surprising grace for someone who must have been in her 70s. Her eyes, a startling shade of amber, fixed on Sarah with an intensity that made the girl catch her breath. "So," Dr. Blackwood said softly, "it's happening again." The simple statement hung in the air like a thundercloud. Dr. Chen stepped forward protectively. "I'm sorry, but who exactly are you?" 40 years ago, Dr. Blackwood replied, still looking at Sarah. "I was the lead researcher at the National Institute of Veterinary Sciences. We had a case that, well, perhaps it's better if I show you." She opened an ancient laptop, its casing scratched and worn. The video that played was grainy with age, but the scene was unmistakable. A young woman, probably in her 20s, stood beside a critically injured horse. As they watched, she placed her hands on the animal's wound, and the same shimmer Sarah recognized from her own healings appeared. "Her name was Rebecca Martinez," Dr. Blackwood explained. "She had the same gift you have, Sarah, the same ability to heal, the same physical toll it took on her body. We studied her abilities for 2 years, documented everything." She paused, her expression darkening, "until others got involved." "What others?" Dr. Chen demanded. "People who saw the potential for profit, for weapons development, for things Rebecca never intended." Dr. Blackwood's voice carried decades of regret. "They pushed her too hard, demanded too much. They didn't understand that the gift had limits, that it came with a cost." Sarah's throat felt dry. What happened to her? She tried to heal too many animals too quickly. The energy drain. Dr. Blackwood stopped, composing herself. "I promised her I would wait, watch for others like her, and make sure they didn't make the same mistakes. When I saw your video, I knew I had to come." Dr. Morton cleared his throat. "Dr. Blackwood's research could help us understand what's happening in the tissue samples, explain the healing process scientifically. But more importantly, she might be able to help you control and develop your ability safely." Sarah sank into a chair, her mind racing. "The FDA investigation, Dr. Reynolds's accusations, are nothing compared to what's coming," Dr. Blackwood finished. "There are already people in Washington discussing legislation about unregulated biological manipulation. Private companies are filing patents on testing methods for spontaneous tissue regeneration. They're building a cage of regulations and legal barriers, Sarah, and they're going to try to trap you inside it." "We won't let that happen," Dr. Chen declared firmly. "No, we won't," Dr. Blackwood agreed. "But Sarah needs to be prepared. She needs to understand her gift fully, its capabilities and its limitations, and she needs to learn how to protect herself." A notification popped up on Dr. Morton's computer. Another interview with Dr. Reynolds, this time claiming she had proof of cellular abnormalities in healed tissue. The accusations were getting more sophisticated, more scientific-sounding, harder to dismiss. "I can help you," Dr. Blackwood said gently. "I can teach you what we learned from Rebecca, how to focus the energy, how to minimize the physical toll, how to document everything in ways that will stand up to scientific scrutiny. But we need to start now, before things get worse." Sarah looked at her mother, seeing the worry and hope warring in her expression. Then she thought of Thunder, of the paint pony, of all the horses she'd helped, and all the ones still waiting. Finally, she thought of Rebecca Martinez, a woman who had carried the same gift and paid a terrible price for it. "What do we do first?" she asked. Dr. Blackwood smiled, reaching into her bag. She pulled out a thick journal, its pages yellow with age, filled with handwritten notes and diagrams. "First, you learn from Rebecca's journey. Then we begin your training. But Sarah," her expression grew serious, "you must promise me something. No matter how desperate people are, no matter how many animals need help, you must never push beyond the limits we discover. Your gift is precious, but it's not worth your life." As Sarah took the journal with trembling hands, a noise from outside drew everyone to the window. Another protest had formed at Silver Creek's gates, but this time, it wasn't angry skeptics. It was people holding signs reading, "Let Sarah heal," and "Stop the FDA persecution." "You see?" Dr. Blackwood said softly. "You're not alone. There are people who believe in you, who will fight for you. My job is to make sure you're strong enough to face whatever comes next." Sarah opened the journal to its first page, where Rebecca Martinez had written in flowing script, "To those who share this gift, may you learn from my mistakes and find the wisdom to use your power well." As she began to read, Sarah felt something she hadn't experienced since the chaos began: hope. With Dr. Blackwood's guidance and Rebecca's journal, perhaps she could find a way to help the horses while protecting herself. But deep down, she knew this was just the beginning of a much longer journey. What none of them noticed was the small drone hovering just outside the office window, its camera capturing every moment of Dr. Blackwood's arrival. In a dark room hundreds of miles away, a figure watched the feed with growing interest. "So," they murmured, "the old woman has finally surfaced. This changes everything." "Focus," Dr. Blackwood's calm voice guided Sarah as she placed her hands on the injured mare's leg. "Don't just feel the injury. Understand it. See it in your mind. The gift isn't magic. It's a connection between your energy and the horse's natural healing process." They were in a converted barn at the far end of Silver Creek, away from prying eyes and cameras. Dr. Blackwood had insisted on creating this private space for Sarah's training, equipped with medical monitoring devices and cameras to document every healing session. 2 weeks had passed since their first meeting, and Sarah was learning things about her gift that she'd never imagined possible. "The tingling in your hands," Dr. Blackwood continued, watching as Sarah worked. "Tell me what you feel." "It's different this time," Sarah replied, concentrating. "Usually it's like static electricity, but now I can feel patterns, like currents flowing in specific directions." Dr. Chen monitored the medical equipment, noting changes in both Sarah and the horse's vital signs. "Heart rates are synchronizing," she announced, just like in Rebecca's notes. Sarah had spent hours studying Rebecca Martinez's journal, learning from her detailed observations and experiences. The woman's insights were invaluable. She had mapped out energy patterns, documented different types of injuries, and most importantly, outlined the dangers of overexertion. "Good," Dr. Blackwood nodded as the healing progressed. "Now, ease back slowly. Remember what we learned. You don't have to heal everything at once. Guide the body's natural healing process. Accelerate it, but don't force it." This was perhaps the most crucial lesson. Sarah had been trying to completely heal injuries immediately, which explained the severe drain on her energy. Rebecca's notes showed how to work with the body's natural healing mechanisms instead of overwhelming them. The mare's injury, a torn tendon that would normally take months to heal, showed visible improvement after just 10 minutes. But unlike her previous healings, Sarah remained steady on her feet when she finished. "Excellent," Dr. Blackwood praised, examining the horse's leg. "The tissue is responding perfectly, and your vital signs are stable. You're learning to channel the energy more efficiently." Dr. Morton, who had been documenting the session, stepped forward with ultrasound equipment. "The tendon structure is remarkable," he noted, studying the images. "The collagen alignment is perfect, better than natural healing would produce. This could revolutionize veterinary medicine. If we're allowed to publish the findings," Dr. Chen added grimly. The legal barriers were mounting. The FDA had classified Sarah's ability as an experimental biological treatment, requiring extensive testing and approval before it could be legally practiced. Several pharmaceutical companies had filed patents related to bioenergetic healing, trying to claim ownership of any practical applications of her gift. "They can't patent what they don't understand," Dr. Blackwood said firmly, "and they won't understand it until they accept that this isn't about medicine or science. It's about connection, the bond between healer and animal." Sarah wiped sweat from her forehead, feeling tired but not drained as she had before. "It's like the horses are helping me help them, when I stop trying to force the healing and just guide it." "Exactly," Dr. Blackwood smiled. Rebecca called it collaborative healing. "The gift isn't about imposing change. It's about facilitating natural processes." A commotion outside interrupted their discussion. Through the barn windows, they could see Alexandra Sterling's security team confronting someone at the perimeter fence. Dr. Blackwood tensed, moving to block the windows. "Another reporter?" Sarah asked wearily. The media frenzy hadn't died down. If anything, it had intensified as rumors spread about her training. "Worse," Alexandra said, hurrying into the barn. "Corporate spies, that company that tried to patent the healing process. They're getting desperate for data. We caught someone trying to plant surveillance equipment." Dr. Blackwood's expression darkened. "It's happening again, just like with Rebecca. The vultures are circling." Sarah stroked the healed mare's neck, drawing comfort from the animal's calm presence. "But this time we're prepared, right? We're documenting everything, doing it scientifically." "Science isn't always enough," Dr. Blackwood warned. "Rebecca had proof too, but when money and power are involved, truth isn't always the deciding factor." As if to emphasize her point, Dr. Morton's phone buzzed with a news alert. Dr. Reynolds was holding another press conference, this time with a team of researchers, claiming they had identified dangerous cellular mutations in tissue samples from healed horses. "That's impossible," Dr. Morton exploded. "We've done every possible test. The healing is completely natural, just accelerated." "They're not interested in facts," Dr. Blackwood said quietly. "They want to control this gift, to turn it into something they can own and sell. And if they can't do that—" She trailed off, her expression haunted by memories. Sarah felt a chill despite the warm barn. What happened to Rebecca? Really? Dr. Blackwood was silent for a long moment. Finally, she opened Rebecca's journal to one of the last entries, written in shaky handwriting. "They're going to take everything. My freedom, my gift, my choice to help animals. I won't let them. Better to disappear than to become their prisoner." Rebecca vanished. Dr. Blackwood explained softly. "Left everything behind rather than let them control her gift. I've spent decades making sure her research survived, waiting for someone like you. But Sarah—" She gripped the girl's shoulders gently. "We're not going to let history repeat itself. This time, we fight back." Looking around at her support system, Dr. Blackwood's wisdom, her mother's devotion, Dr. Morton's scientific backing, Alexandra's resources, Sarah felt stronger than ever. But as she watched security guards sweep the property for more hidden cameras, she couldn't shake the feeling that the real battle was just beginning. "Then let's make sure we're ready," she said, picking up Rebecca's journal. "We have work to do." The call came at midnight. A devastating fire had swept through Mountain View Stables, one of the largest equestrian centers in the state. Dozens of horses were injured, many critically. The owner, desperate and out of options, had reached out to Alexandra Sterling for help. "It's bad, Sarah," Alexandra explained as they raced through the dark in her SUV. "Burns, smoke inhalation, trauma from panic. They've got every vet in the county there, but they're losing horses." Sarah sat between her mother and Dr. Blackwood in the back seat, clutching Rebecca's journal. The past month of training had made her stronger, more controlled. But this would be different. This wasn't one horse or a simple injury. This was mass casualty triage. "Remember what we discussed," Dr. Blackwood said firmly. "You can't save them all. Focus on the ones you can help without depleting yourself completely." Dr. Chen squeezed her daughter's hand. "We'll be right there with you. Dr. Morton is already on his way with the monitoring equipment." The scene that greeted them was chaos. The stable's floodlights cast harsh shadows across the emergency treatment area, where injured horses lay on hastily spread tarps. Smoke still rose from the charred building behind them, and the air stung with the acrid smell of burnt wood and fear. The stable owner, Mrs. Rodriguez, ran to meet them, her face streaked with soot and tears. "Thank God you're here. We've lost 3 already. The vets are doing what they can, but—" Sarah surveyed the scene, her heart pounding. More than 20 horses needed help, their injuries ranging from minor burns to life-threatening conditions. The sound of their pain, whinnies of distress, labored breathing, cut through her like physical blows. "Set up the monitoring equipment here," Dr. Blackwood directed, taking charge. "Dr. Chen, coordinate with the other vets. We need to prioritize cases and track Sarah's energy levels." A news van screeched into the parking lot, reporters already jumping out with cameras. Alexandra immediately moved to intercept them. "I'll handle the media. You focus on the horses." Sarah knelt beside the first horse, a young gelding with severe burns along his flank. Dr. Morton appeared at her side with the monitors. "Remember your training," he said, attaching sensors to track her vital signs. "Work with the body's natural healing process. Don't force it." Taking a deep breath, Sarah placed her hands on the horse's burned skin. The familiar energy flow began, but she controlled it carefully, remembering Rebecca's notes about treating burns. Guide the healing. Don't overwhelm it. The gelding's breathing steadied as new skin began to form. Hours blurred together as Sarah moved from horse to horse. She worked methodically, following Dr. Blackwood's guidance on energy conservation. The monitoring equipment beeped steadily, warning when her levels dropped too low. After each healing, she took the prescribed breaks, drinking the special electrolyte solution Dr. Morton had developed based on Rebecca's research. News crews gathered at the perimeter, broadcasting live as horses that had been at death's door stood up, shook themselves, and walked away. Social media exploded with videos of the miraculous recoveries. But Sarah barely noticed, focused entirely on her task. "Your heart rate's elevating," Dr. Chen warned, as Sarah approached the 15th horse. "You need to rest." "There are still more," Sarah protested, watching as vets worked desperately to stabilize a mare with severe smoke inhalation. "You've done more than enough," Dr. Blackwood insisted. "You can't help anyone if you collapse." But then Sarah heard it, a sound that made her blood run cold. A high-pitched whistle of distress from the partially burned barn. Everyone had assumed all horses were out, but before anyone could stop her, Sarah was running toward the sound. Inside the smoky building, she found a horse trapped behind fallen debris. It was Mrs. Rodriguez's prized stallion, Midnight Sun, his leg crushed under a fallen beam. "Sarah! Get out of there!" her mother screamed. "The structure's unstable!" But Sarah couldn't leave him. Midnight Sun's eyes rolled in panic as she approached, the whites visible in the dim light. The roof groaned ominously above them. "Easy, boy," she whispered, reaching out to touch his neck. "I'm here to help." The healing began, but this was different. The injury was severe, complicated by crushing damage and trauma. Sarah felt her energy draining rapidly as she worked to repair bone, muscle, and tissue simultaneously. The monitors in Dr. Morton's hand began screaming alerts. "Her vitals are crashing! Get her out of there!" "Sarah, stop!" Dr. Blackwood's voice carried decades of fear. "You're going too far." But Sarah couldn't stop, wouldn't stop, not when she was so close. Images of Rebecca flashed through her mind, the warnings in her journal about pushing too hard, going too far. But as Midnight Sun's leg began to heal, as his panic subsided, Sarah knew this was what her gift was for. The world began to fade, around the edges, as she poured the last of her energy into the healing. The last thing she heard was the stable roof creaking above her, her mother's scream of terror, and Midnight Sun's strong, healthy neigh as he finally stood up. Then darkness took her, and Sarah Chen, the miracle healer of Silver Creek, collapsed, beside the horse she had saved at potentially devastating cost to herself. Sarah floated in darkness, aware of voices arguing around her. The hospital room's machines beeped steadily, marking time as she drifted in and out of consciousness. Her mother's voice, tight with worry. Dr. Blackwood's measured tones. Dr. Morton's clinical observations. They blurred together like watercolors in her mind. Her body temperature is still 3 degrees below normal, Dr. Morton was saying. It's like her energy reserves are completely depleted. I warned her, Dr. Blackwood's voice cracked with emotion. This is exactly what happened to Rebecca before. She's not Rebecca, Dr. Chen interrupted firmly, and we know more. Now, we can help her. Sarah wanted to respond, to reassure them, but her body felt impossibly heavy. Images flashed through her mind. Burning stables, injured horses, midnight sun's desperate eyes. Had she saved him? Had it been worth it? The door opened, and a new voice joined the conversation. Alexandra Sterling, sounding more animated than Sarah had ever heard her. You need to see this, Alexandra announced. The videos from last night have gone viral, but not like before. This is different. Sarah forced her eyes open, squinting against the harsh hospital lights. The room slowly came into focus, her mother's worried face, Dr. Blackwood's stern expression, Alexandra holding up a tablet. Easy, Dr. Chen cautioned as Sarah tried to sit up. You've been out for almost 24 hours. The horses, Sarah managed to whisper. Did they? Every single one survived, Dr. Morton confirmed. Including Midnight Sun, the healing. It was unprecedented. Even with your previous cases, we've never seen anything like it. Alexandra turned the tablet toward Sarah. The screen showed multiple news channels covering the story, but these weren't the skeptical reports they'd grown used to. These broadcasts showed the dramatic footage of Sarah working through the night, healing horse after horse. Interviews with the veterinarians who had been present, testifying to the miraculous recoveries they had witnessed. Dr. Reynolds tried to discredit it, Alexandra explained with a hint of satisfaction. But there were too many witnesses this time, too much evidence. The entire veterinary team from Mountain View has gone public defending you. Dr. Morton nodded, pulling up medical charts on his own tablet. We have complete documentation, before and after scans, blood work, tissue samples. The healing is real, and more importantly, it's stable. None of the horses are showing any signs of regression or complications. The scientific community is paying attention now, Dr. Chen added. Real attention, not just criticism. 3 major research hospitals have reached out, wanting to study the healing process properly. Sarah tried to process this information through her exhaustion. But the FDA? The patents? That's where it gets interesting, Alexandra smiled. Mrs. Rodriguez went on national television this morning. She's a state senator's wife, and she's not being quiet about what she saw. The public pressure is enormous. Nobody wants to be seen as the one preventing miracle healings. Dr. Blackwood had been unusually quiet, studying Sarah with those penetrating amber eyes. Finally, she spoke. You did something remarkable last night. Not just the healing, though that was extraordinary, but the way you did it. You pushed to your limit, but didn't go beyond it. You used everything we taught you. Except for running into a burning building, Dr. Chen interjected dryly. The monitoring data is fascinating, Dr. Morton added, showing them a graph. Even in crisis, even with that final healing, she maintained control. The energy transfer was precise, measured. Nothing like the chaotic patterns we saw in her early attempts. A nurse entered with more monitors and medication, but she was grinning excitedly. You're all over the news, she told Sarah. My sister's horse has a tendon injury. Everyone at her stable is talking about you. As if to emphasize this point, Alexandra's phone buzzed with another update. The American Veterinary Medical Association is calling for a special session to discuss alternative healing methodologies in light of recent events. They're asking if you'll demonstrate your abilities under controlled conditions. No, Dr. Blackwood said sharply. She needs to rest, to recover. This isn't a circus performance. Actually, Sarah said, her voice stronger now. Maybe we should consider it. Everyone turned to look at her in surprise. Think about it, she continued. A controlled demonstration, with full documentation, in front of the veterinary community's leadership. Isn't that what we've been working toward? A chance to prove this is real, scientific, and beneficial? Dr. Blackwood's expression softened. You're not Rebecca, she said quietly. I keep having to remind myself of that. She ran from the attention. The pressure. But you're finding a way to work with it. Because I'm not alone, Sarah replied, looking around at her support team. And because you taught me how to control it, not just use it. Through the window, she could see more news vans arriving at the hospital. The world was watching, waiting to see what would happen next. But for the first time since her gift had been revealed, Sarah didn't feel afraid of the attention. Mrs. Rodriguez is here, Alexandra announced, checking another message. She brought pictures of Midnight Sun. The press is calling it the miracle at midnight. Your old critics are looking pretty foolish now. Sarah leaned back against her pillows, tired but satisfied. When can we do the demonstration? She asked. First you rest, her mother insisted. Then we plan. We do this right. Dr. Morton was already making notes. We'll need proper protocols, documentation procedures. This could establish the foundation for an entirely new field of veterinary medicine. As they discussed plans and possibilities, Sarah felt something she hadn't experienced since that first day with Thunder, pure certainty. Her gift wasn't a curse or a controversy. It was a bridge between scientific understanding and something deeper, something that connected her to every horse she helped. The mystery of her ability remained, but now they had a chance to explore it properly, to help others understand and accept it. As she drifted back to sleep, Sarah smiled, knowing that while one chapter of her journey was ending, an even more important one was just beginning. The auditorium at the National Veterinary Research Center hummed with anticipation. Hundreds of veterinarians, researchers, and medical professionals filled every seat, their attention focused on the demonstration area below. Behind a partition, Sarah prepared for what would be the most important presentation of her gift yet. Everything's ready, Dr. Morton announced, checking the array of monitoring equipment. Cameras would capture every angle. Specialized sensors would track energy fluctuations, and medical imaging devices stood by to document the healing process in real time. Dr. Chen adjusted one of the sensors attached to her daughter's temples. Remember, this isn't about proving anything to them. It's about helping them understand. Sarah nodded, though her hands trembled slightly as she reviewed the day's schedule. They would demonstrate her ability on 3 different cases, each carefully selected to showcase different aspects of the healing process. The first would be Thunder, whose original healing had started everything. The second was a new case, a horse with degenerative joint disease. The third would be Midnight Sun, returning for a follow-up healing session. Dr. Blackwood emerged from watching the audience arrive. The FDA representatives are here, she reported, along with researchers from Johns Hopkins, Mayo Clinic, and several international institutions. Even Dr. Reynolds showed up. Good, Sarah said firmly. Let her see for herself. The presentation began with Dr. Morton explaining the scientific protocols they had developed. He showed detailed data from previous healings, including cellular, regeneration rates, tissue response patterns, and long-term follow-up studies. The audience listened intently, their skepticism gradually giving way to professional curiosity. Then, it was time. Thunder was led into the demonstration area, his presence commanding attention. Though fully healed, they had documented every aspect of his recovery, and he would now serve as a demonstration of the healing's permanence. The original injury site shows no sign of degradation or abnormal tissue growth, Dr. Morton explained as ultrasound images appeared on the large screens. In fact, the healed tissue is more resilient than the surrounding area. Sarah approached Thunder, placing her hands on his leg where the original injury had been. The sensors attached to her began feeding data to the displays, showing the subtle energy exchange that occurred even during routine interaction with a healed animal. As you can see, Dr. Chen narrated, There's a measurable bioelectric field that forms between healer and subject. We believe this field facilitates the acceleration of natural healing processes. The second case proved more dramatic. The horse with degenerative joint disease, a retired show jumper named Atlas, could barely walk when he was led in. Sarah centered herself, remembering her training, and began the healing process. The audience gasped as the monitors displayed real-time images of cartilage regeneration. Multiple imaging systems confirmed what they were seeing. Tissue that medical science had considered irreparable was rebuilding itself under Sarah's touch. The cellular reconstruction pattern is extraordinary, Dr. Morton commented, highlighting specific areas on the display. Note how the process follows natural healing pathways, but at an exponentially accelerated rate. A researcher from Johns Hopkins stood up. Could this be replicated, perhaps through some form of energy therapy or cellular stimulation? That's what we're hoping to understand, Dr. Chen replied. Sarah's gift appears to activate inherent healing mechanisms that exist in all living tissue. If we can understand how she does this, it could revolutionize both human and veterinary medicine. Then came Midnight Sun. The stallion's dramatic rescue had captured public imagination, but this would be the first time his follow-up treatment was documented scientifically. As Sarah worked, the monitors showed something unexpected. The energy pattern, Dr. Blackwood observed, studying the readings. It's different from the others. Dr. Morton adjusted some settings, his excitement visible. The horse appears to be actively participating in the healing process. Look at these synchronized biorhythms. It's almost like a conversation between cellular systems. Sarah felt it too. Each horse responded differently to healing, but with Midnight Sun, there was a deeper connection, as if he remembered her from that desperate night in the burning stable. The healing flowed more easily, more naturally. This is consistent with what we've observed in long-term cases, Dr. Chen explained to the audience. The more an animal is exposed to this healing energy, the more efficiently it responds to subsequent treatments. As the demonstration concluded, the audience erupted in discussion. Even Dr. Reynolds appeared deep in thought, furiously taking notes. The FDA representatives huddled together, their earlier skepticism replaced by intense interest. Questions? Dr. Morton invited. Dozens of hands shot up. The inquiries were technical, specific, and serious. These weren't skeptics looking to disprove Sarah's gift. These were scientists eager to understand it. Could this process be applied to other species? What are the energy consumption patterns during different types of healing? Is there a genetic component to the healing ability? Sarah answered what she could, with her team providing technical details. But it was Dr. Blackwood who offered perhaps the most important insight. We're witnessing something that bridges the gap between scientific understanding and natural healing, she told the audience. Sarah's gift isn't magical or mystical. It's a previously unrecognized aspect of biological potential. By studying it properly, we may unlock new understanding of how all living things heal. As the session ended, Sarah found herself surrounded by researchers eager to collaborate, veterinarians hoping to learn, and even former critics offering congratulations. But her attention was drawn to a quiet figure at the back of the room. An elderly Asian woman who watched with tears in her eyes before silently leaving. Dr. Blackwood noticed Sarah's distraction. What is it? That woman, Sarah said. Something about her. Did you see how she was looking at me? Dr. Blackwood's expression changed subtly. Perhaps you're not as unique as we thought. The question is, are others like you finally ready to come forward? The implications of that question would have to wait. The FDA representatives were approaching, documents in hand. The next phase of Sarah's journey, official recognition and regulation of her gift, was about to begin. Take us through. The process one more time, Sarah instructed, watching as Dr. Jennifer Hayes, a promising veterinary student, placed her hands on the injured horse's leg. Around them, a dozen other veterinarians and students observed intently, taking notes and monitoring equipment. 3 months had passed since the National Veterinary Research Center demonstration, and Silver Creek had transformed into something entirely new, the Center for Integrative Equine Healing. The FDA had granted special research status to Sarah's work, allowing her to not only continue healing but also to begin teaching others. "I can feel something," Dr. Hayes reported, her face scrunched in concentration, "like a very faint tingling." Sarah nodded encouragingly. "That's the first step. Now, try to follow that sensation. Let it guide you to where the injury needs attention." While no one had yet replicated Sarah's full healing abilities, they had discovered something remarkable. Some people could learn to sense the energy fields she worked with. More surprisingly, this awareness seemed to enhance traditional veterinary treatments. "The latest results are impressive," Dr. Morton announced, entering the training arena with a fresh stack of reports. "Veterinarians who've completed your sensitivity training are showing a 40% improvement in treatment success rates, even without direct healing abilities." Dr. Blackwood, who had been quietly observing from the corner, smiled. "It's exactly what Rebecca theorized. The gift isn't binary. It exists on a spectrum, and many people have some degree of healing sensitivity. They just need to learn how to access it." The elderly Asian woman they had spotted at the demonstration had never reappeared, but her presence that day had sparked a chain reaction. More people had begun coming forward, sharing stories of unusual connections with animals, mysterious healings and unexplained abilities. "Speaking of connections," Alexandra called out, hurrying into the arena with her tablet. "You need to see this. That young girl in Australia we've been corresponding with, she just sent new footage." The video showed a teenage girl working with injured wildlife, demonstrating abilities remarkably similar to Sarah's. While not as powerful, the healing effect was undeniable. "That makes 7 confirmed cases worldwide," Dr. Chen noted, updating their database. "All young women, all showing abilities during adolescence. We're finally building a pattern." Sarah watched the Australian video with mixed emotions. Each new discovery brought hope and validation, but also increased attention and pressure. The scientific community's excitement was building, along with pharmaceutical companies' interest in synthesizing or replicating the healing effect. "Dr. Reynolds is here again," Katie announced from the doorway, rolling her eyes. Their former critic had become one of their most dedicated researchers, though her approach remained intensely scientific. "Send her to the lab," Dr. Morton replied. "We're running new cellular response tests she'll want to see." The center had grown exponentially, now housing state-of-the-art research facilities alongside the healing and training areas. Major universities had established partnership programs, sending students and researchers to study what they were now calling bioenergetic medicine. But not all the attention was welcome. Sarah caught glimpses of dark SUVs sometimes parked near the center, their windows tinted, their purpose unclear. Dr. Blackwood had noticed them too, her expression growing troubled each time they appeared. "Your mother's interview with National Geographic is live," Alexandra announced, pulling up the article on the main screen. The cover showed Sarah working with a horse, her hands glowing softly in the carefully captured photograph. The headline read, "The Science of Miracle Healing, How a Teenage Girl's Gift is Revolutionizing Veterinary Medicine." The licensing. "Agreements are final too," Alexandra continued. "Any treatments or technologies developed from studying your abilities will require your approval and ethical oversight. Your gift can't be weaponized or commercialized without your consent." This had been one of their biggest victories, establishing legal protection for how Sarah's abilities could be used and studied. Dr. Blackwood had insisted on it, determined not to repeat the mistakes of Rebecca's era. "There's something else," Dr. Chen added softly, pulling Sarah aside. "Remember that genetic study we participated in? They found something, a unique marker that appears in all the confirmed healers. It's inherited, but it needs specific conditions to activate." Sarah absorbed this information, thinking of her father, who had passed away when she was young. Had the gift come from him, from his side of the family? There were still so many mysteries to unravel. A commotion outside drew their attention. A horse trailer had arrived, and from the gathering crowd's reaction, this was no ordinary case. Sarah recognized the trailer's logo. It belonged to one of the most prestigious racing stables in the country. Triple Crown contender, Alexandra explained quickly. Career-ending injury during training. They've tried everything else. As Sarah walked out to meet the new arrival, she felt the familiar mix of purpose and responsibility settle over her. Each case brought new challenges, new opportunities to understand her gift. But more importantly, each healing helped validate what she had known all along, that this ability wasn't meant to be hidden or controlled, but shared and understood. The assembled students and veterinarians followed her, eager to learn from another demonstration. Among them, Dr. Hayes moved with new confidence, her own healing sensitivity growing stronger through practice and guidance. "Ready?" Dr. Blackwood asked, setting up the monitoring equipment with practiced efficiency. Sarah nodded, remembering how far they'd come from those first chaotic days with Thunder. "Ready. Let's show them what's possible." As she prepared to work with the injured racehorse, Sarah caught a glimpse of another dark SUV arriving at the center. Something told her that while they had won many battles, the war for understanding and accepting her gift was far from over. But this time, she wasn't just a scared teenager with an unexplainable ability. She was the leader of a movement that was changing the future of veterinary medicine forever. The email arrived just as Sarah was finishing a training session with Dr. Hayes. At first glance, it seemed like one of the hundreds of requests for help they received daily, but something about this one caught her attention. The message was from a wildlife sanctuary in Montana, describing a situation unlike anything she'd encountered before. "What do you think?" Sarah asked, showing the email to Dr. Blackwood. "They have an injured wild Mustang they can't even get close to. Traditional veterinary treatment isn't an option." Dr. Blackwood studied the message, her expression thoughtful. A completely wild horse, untouched by humans. It would be a unique test of your abilities. But the risks are considerable, Dr. Chen interrupted, reading over their shoulders. "The sanctuary is in remote mountain territory. The horse is injured but completely untamed. It's not like working with domesticated animals." Alexandra, ever practical, was already checking logistics. "The sanctuary is legitimate. They specialize in preserving wild horse herds. The injured stallion is apparently a crucial breeding male, important to maintaining genetic diversity in the population." Sarah felt a familiar stirring of purpose. "We have to try. This isn't just about healing one horse. It's about helping preserve these wild herds." Dr. Morton frowned at the attached photos. "The terrain is challenging. We can't transport our usual equipment up there. We'd be working with minimal monitoring capabilities." "Maybe that's not a bad thing," Sarah suggested. "All our scientific validation has been valuable, but with a wild horse, maybe we need a different approach. Something more instinctive." Dr. Blackwood's eyes lit up. Like Rebecca's early work, before all the scientific documentation, she wrote about connecting with horses in their natural state. She believed the purest form of healing happened when artificial barriers were removed. The decision was made. Within days, they were bumping along a rough mountain road in specially equipped vehicles. The sanctuary's director, Mark Runningwolf, met them at the base camp. "The stallion was injured 3 weeks ago," he explained, leading them to an observation post. "Probably from a fight with another male. The wound is infected now, and he's growing weaker. We've tried darting him with antibiotics, but he's too smart, stays just out of range." Through powerful binoculars, Sarah could see the horse in question. Even injured, he was magnificent. A Palomino stallion with a flowing white mane, moving with wild grace despite his obvious pain. A small, Herd of mares and foals stayed close to him, protective and concerned. "What do you think?" Dr. Chen asked softly. "Can you help him from this distance?" Sarah shook her head. "I need to be closer. But everything we've learned about energy fields suggests the healing might actually be stronger with a truly wild animal. They're more connected to their natural healing abilities, less influenced by human interference." Mark looked skeptical. "No one gets close to these horses. They're completely wild, and this stallion is particularly defensive since being injured." "Then we need to give him a reason to trust us," Sarah said, an idea forming. She turned to Dr. Hayes. "Remember what we discovered about healing energy? Creating a detectable field? What if we could use that to help him understand we're not a threat?" Over the next few hours, they developed a plan. Instead of trying to approach the stallion directly, Sarah would work with one of the sanctuary's gentler mares first, allowing the healing energy to become noticeable to the wild herd. "They're highly sensitive to energy and intention," Marky confirmed. "If they see one of their own accepting help without harm." The strategy worked better than they'd hoped. As Sarah healed the mare's minor injuries, the wild herd grew curious. The stallion in particular watched intently from a distance, his ears forward with interest rather than pinned back in fear. "Look at his body language," Dr. Hayes noted, excitedly. "He's reading the energy field. The mare's positive response is changing his threat assessment." Slowly, over several hours, the distance between Sarah and the wild herd decreased. The stallion's pain eventually overcame his caution, drawing him closer to the strange human who had helped one of his own. "Easy," Sarah whispered as he approached. "I know you're hurting. I know you're scared, but I'm here to help." The moment of connection, when it came, was unlike anything she'd experienced before. The stallion's wild energy merged with her healing power in a way that made her previous work seem tame by comparison. The infection cleared rapidly, tissue regenerating with unprecedented speed. "The readings are off the chart," Dr. Morton whispered, watching the portable monitors they'd managed to bring. "The natural healing response is amplifying her ability exponentially." But something else was happening too. As Sarah worked with the stallion, other members of the herd drew closer. Each horse seemed to contribute somehow to the healing energy, creating a network of natural power that left everyone watching in awe. "It's beautiful," Dr. Blackwood breathed. "This is what Rebecca wrote about in her earliest journals. Healing as a cooperative process between humans and horses in their natural state." When it was over, the stallion didn't run. He stood near Sarah for a long moment, fully healed, his wild eyes holding hers in a connection that transcended the barrier between domestic and wild. Then, with a soft nicker, he returned to his herd. "I've never seen anything like it," Mark said, his voice thick with emotion. "These horses have never willingly interacted with humans before." Sarah watched the herd move away, the stallion once again strong and proud at their head. She felt changed by the experience, understanding her gift in a new way. This wasn't just about healing injuries. It was about bridging worlds, connecting with the pure, untamed spirit that all horses, wild or domestic, carried within them. But as they packed up their equipment, Dr. Blackwood noticed something concerning. The dark SUVs that had been following them had reappeared, parked at a distance on the mountain road. Their presence here, so far from civilization, couldn't be a coincidence. "Sarah," she said quietly, "I think it's time we talked about who's really in those vehicles and why they're so interested in your gift." The drive back from the sanctuary should have been triumphant. Instead, tension filled the vehicles as they wound down the mountain roads. Dr. Blackwood kept checking the rearview mirror, watching the dark SUVs that maintained a consistent distance behind them. "They're not even trying to hide anymore," Alexandra observed grimly. "Something's changed." Sarah's phone buzzed with an urgent message from Dr. Morton, who was back at the center. "You need to see this right away," he wrote, attaching a document. Someone just filed for emergency patents on wild horse healing methodologies. They're trying to claim ownership of what you just did. That's impossible, Dr. Chen protested, reading over Sarah's shoulder. We have legal protection. For the original healing methods, Dr. Blackwood interrupted. But what happened with the wild horses was different. They're claiming it's a new technique outside our existing protections. Suddenly, the lead SUV accelerated, pulling alongside their vehicle. The tinted window rolled down, revealing a man in a crisp suit. "Miss Chen," he called out. "We need to talk. Pull over at the next turnout." Dr. Chen, who was driving, gripped the wheel tighter. "We don't have to stop." "Yes," Dr. Blackwood said quietly, "we do. Because I know who they are and what they want. It's time you all knew the truth about what happened to Rebecca." The turnout was a scenic overlook, offering a panoramic view of the valley below. As they parked, more vehicles arrived, not just the SUVs that had been following them, but others that seemed to materialize from nowhere. "Stay close to me," Dr. Blackwood told Sarah as they got out. The man from the SUV approached, accompanied by others in similar suits. Behind them, Sarah noticed armed guards taking up positions around the overlook. "Dr. Sarah Chen," the man said formally. "I'm Director Phillips from the Advanced Biological Research Division. We've been monitoring your progress with great interest." "You mean spying on me," Sarah corrected, feeling her mother's protective hand on her shoulder. "Observing?" Phillips smiled without warmth. "Just as we observed Rebecca Martinez and others before her. Your gift is remarkable, but it's not unique. It's part of a pattern we've been studying for decades." Dr. Blackwood stepped forward. "Tell them everything, James. Tell them what your agency did to Rebecca." Phillips's smile faded. "Dr. Blackwood, still carrying a torch for your old research partner?" The revelation hit Sarah like a physical blow. She turned to Dr. Blackwood. "You and Rebecca were more than—" "Mentor and student," Dr. Blackwood confirmed. "We were partners in every way." Until the ABRD decided her gift was too valuable to leave in civilian hands. "That's not quite accurate," Phillips countered. "We offered Ms. Martinez an opportunity to serve her country. She chose to disappear instead. After you threatened to forcibly recruit her," Dr. Blackwood shot back. "After you tried to weaponize her healing ability into something else entirely." Sarah's mind raced. The other healers who came forward. What happened to them? "They're safe," Phillips assured her. "Working in controlled environments, helping us understand and develop these abilities for the greater good." "You mean locked in government facilities," Dr. Blackwood corrected. "Treated like lab rats, pushed to transform their healing gifts into weapons. That's why Rebecca ran, because she saw what you really wanted." Alexandra had been quietly recording everything on her phone. "The public won't stand for this. Sarah's work is too well known now." "Which is precisely why we're here," Phillips said, "to offer a choice. Work with us willingly, Ms. Chen. Help us understand how you amplified your ability with those wild horses. The potential applications are extraordinary." "Applications for what?" Sarah demanded. "Think bigger than horses," Phillips urged. "Cellular regeneration, accelerated healing, energy transfer on a massive scale. Your gift could revolutionize medicine, yes, but also defense, technology, even space exploration." "Or I could keep helping horses," Sarah countered. "Teaching. Others advancing veterinary medicine, like I've been doing." "That's not an option anymore." Phillips's voice hardened. "What happened with those wild horses? The energy network you created. It proved our theories. Your gift is evolving, becoming more powerful. We can't allow that to continue unsupervised." "You mean uncontrolled?" Dr. Blackwood said. "You want to reproduce it, weaponize it, just like you tried with Rebecca." Sarah felt the familiar tingling in her hands, but different now. Stronger, more focused. The wild horses had indeed changed something in her, awakened a deeper understanding of her gift. "I won't be your experiment," she said firmly, "and I won't let you turn this gift into a weapon." "You don't have a choice," Phillips stated. "Executive Order 7791 gives us authority to secure and study potentially critical biological assets. You're coming with us, Ms. Chen. The only question is whether you do so voluntarily." The armed guards began moving closer. Dr. Chen stepped in front of her daughter, while Alexandra quickly sent the recording to her media contacts. But it was Dr. Blackwood who surprised everyone. "Actually," she said calmly, "she does have a choice." She pulled out her phone, pressed a single button, and smiled. Because Rebecca didn't just run and hide. She built a network, and they've been waiting for exactly this moment. Suddenly, the mountain road filled with vehicles, news vans, police cars, and most surprisingly, official government vehicles bearing markings different from Phillips's agency. A helicopter appeared overhead, its spotlight illuminating the standoff. "Senator Rodriguez sends her regards," Alexandra announced, reading a new message. "Turns out the wife of the woman whose horses Sarah saved has a lot of influence, and she doesn't appreciate Black Ops agencies threatening teenage healers." Phillips's face contorted with rage, but he was already receiving urgent messages through his earpiece. Whatever authority he thought he had was being countermanded at the highest levels. "This isn't over," he warned as his team quickly retreated to their vehicles. "No," Sarah agreed, watching them leave. "But it's changing, just like my gift is. Changing, and you're not going to be the ones controlling that change." As the dark SUVs disappeared down the mountain road, Dr. Blackwood turned to Sarah with tears in her eyes. "Rebecca will be so proud when she meets you." Sarah's heart leaped. "She's alive? You know where she is?" "Of course," Dr. Blackwood smiled. "Who do you think has been coordinating all the other healers we've discovered? Building the network that just saved you." The implications of this revelation were staggering, but they would have to wait. News crews were approaching, eager to understand what had just happened on the mountain overlook. This confrontation would expose the ABRD's activities, protect other healers from government exploitation, and change the future of how gifts like Sarah's were understood and treated. But first, they had a long-overdue meeting to arrange with a woman who had paved the way for all of it, Rebecca Martinez herself. 1 month after the confrontation on the mountain, Sarah stood before the gleaming glass doors of the newly established International Center for Bioenergetic Healing. The modern facility, built on an expanded Silver Creek property, represented everything they had fought for, a place where healing gifts could be studied, developed, and used for their intended purpose. "Ready?" Dr. Blackwood asked, standing beside her. The grand opening ceremony would begin in an hour, and already the parking lots were filling with journalists, scientists, and supporters from around the world. "Almost," Sarah replied, watching as Thunder was led into the center's main demonstration arena. The stallion who had started it all would play a special role today. "I just can't believe how much has changed." The past month had been a whirlwind of activity. After the ABRD's attempted intervention became public, other government agencies had stepped forward to provide legitimate oversight and protection. Senator Rodriguez had pushed through legislation specifically protecting healing gifts from military or weapons development. "The latest scans are remarkable," Dr. Morton announced, hurrying over with his ever-present tablet. "The healing network you established with the wild horses? We're seeing evidence that it permanently enhanced your abilities. Your energy field is stronger, more stable." This enhancement had proved crucial in recent weeks, as more healers came forward. Encouraged by the new legal protections, Sarah had helped them understand and develop their gifts. Each person's ability manifested slightly differently, but all shared the same core connection to animal healing. The first students are arriving, Alexandra called out, directing staff with practiced efficiency. The center would serve as both research facility and training institution, teaching everything from basic healing sensitivity to advanced bioenergetic techniques. Dr. Chen emerged from the medical wing, where they had established state-of-the-art monitoring facilities. The Korean team just arrived with their equipment. They're setting up the new imaging systems that can track energy transfer in real time. Sarah nodded, but her attention was drawn to a group of teenagers being led through the center's side entrance. These were the first official students of the Healing Arts program, young people who had shown sensitivity to healing energy and would spend the next year learning to develop their abilities. "They remind me of you," Dr. Blackwood said softly. "When you first started working with Thunder, so much potential, so much uncertainty." The main doors opened, admitting Dr. Hayes, who had become one of their most successful instructors. Though not a full healer like Sarah, her ability to sense and work with healing energy had made her invaluable in teaching others. The wild horse sanctuary called, she reported excitedly. "The techniques we developed are working. They're able to help injured wild horses without capturing or restraining them, just by creating the right energy environment." This had been one of their most significant breakthroughs, learning how to establish healing spaces that animals could choose to enter voluntarily. It had revolutionized wildlife rehabilitation and veterinary practice. A subtle shift in the atmosphere made Sarah turn toward the center's private entrance. Her heart skipped a beat as she saw who had arrived. An elegant woman in her 60s, her silver-streaked black hair pulled back in a familiar style. "Rebecca," Dr. Blackwood whispered, moving forward to embrace her long-lost partner. Rebecca Martinez carried herself with quiet dignity, but her eyes sparkled with emotion as she surveyed the center. "It's everything we dreamed of," she said softly. "Everything we wanted to create, before the ABRD tried to twist it into something else," Dr. Blackwood finished. "But that's over now. Thanks to Sarah, thanks to all of this, no one will have to hide their gift again." Sarah approached Rebecca almost shyly, despite having spoken with her several times over the past month. The older woman's guidance had been invaluable in establishing the center's protocols and protection measures. "The network is growing," Rebecca told her, smiling warmly. "We've confirmed healing gifts in 12 countries now, each one slightly different but all connected to the same fundamental energy. And thanks to you, they have a place to learn, to develop safely." Through the center's windows, Sarah could see more vehicles arriving: veterinarians, researchers, students, and most importantly, people bringing horses in need of healing. The waiting list was long, but with more healers being trained, they could help more animals than ever before. "Ms. Chen?" A young girl, one of the new students, approached, hesitantly. Could you show us how you first knew you had the gift? With Thunder?" Sarah smiled, leading the group toward the demonstration arena where Thunder waited. As she began to work with him, showing the students how to sense the healing energy, she felt the familiar connection establish itself. But now it was stronger, deeper, enhanced by everything she had learned. "The gift was never meant to be a weapon or a secret," she explained, as the students watched in awe. "It's about connection, about helping, about bringing healing to those in need." Dr. Blackwood and Rebecca stood arm in arm watching Sarah teach. "She's surpassed everything we imagined," Rebecca said softly. "She didn't just protect the gift. She transformed it, made it something that could be shared, taught, understood." Alexandra approached with a tablet displaying global news coverage of the center's opening. Healers and their supporters around the world were celebrating this moment, this validation of their gifts and establishment of a safe place to develop them. "There will always be those who want to control or exploit gifts like these," Dr. Chen said, watching her daughter work. "But they'll never succeed, not anymore. Sarah didn't just heal horses, she healed the way the world sees these abilities." As the grand opening ceremony approached, Sarah felt a deep sense of rightness. The frightened teenager who had first approached a wounded stallion was gone, replaced by someone who understood her gift and its true purpose. The International Center for Bioenergetic Healing wasn't just a building or an institution. It was a promise to every person who carried the healing gift, to every animal in need of help. The legacy she had built would ensure that no healer would ever have to hide again, and no horse would have to suffer without hope of healing. It was exactly what her gift had been meant for all along. 5 years had passed since that first miraculous healing with Thunder, and Sarah Chen stood at the podium of the World Veterinary Conference in Geneva, looking out at an audience that represented the convergence of traditional veterinary medicine and bioenergetic healing. "When I first touched an injured horse and felt that spark of energy," she began, "I could never have imagined standing here today. I couldn't have imagined that what seemed like a unique gift would turn out to be something that could be taught, developed, and shared with others." The screens behind her showed statistics that would have seemed impossible just a few years ago. Over 200 confirmed healers worldwide, thousands of successful treatments, and groundbreaking research that had revolutionized our understanding of animal healing. "But the most important number isn't on these screens," Sarah continued. "It's in the stories. The wild Mustang herds thriving with our non-invasive healing program, the working horses whose lives have been extended through integrated treatment, the endangered species being helped through our wildlife conservation initiatives." In the front row, Dr. Blackwood and Rebecca sat hand in hand, their years of separation erased by their shared dedication to protecting and developing healing. Gifts. Beside them, Dr. Chen beamed with pride, while Dr. Morton furiously took notes for their latest research paper. "The International Center for Bioenergetic Healing has become more than we dreamed," Sarah acknowledged. "But its true success lies not in our facilities or our research, but in what it represents. The recognition that healing comes in many forms, and that the connection between humans and animals holds secrets we're only beginning to understand." Thunder, now a distinguished senior horse, still participated in demonstrations at the center. His healing had sparked a revolution, but more importantly, he had shown Sarah her true path. In the years since, she had helped heal thousands of horses, but more significantly, she had helped others discover and develop their own healing abilities. "We've learned that the healing gift isn't rare. It's just been dormant, waiting to be recognized and understood," Sarah explained. "Every day, we discover new people with healing sensitivity. Every day, we learn more about how this energy works, how it can be channeled and shared." Alexandra, who had become the center's executive director, signaled from the side of the stage. It was time for the announcement they had all been waiting for. "Today, I'm honored to announce the next phase of our work," Sarah said, her voice strong with purpose. "The Global Healing Network, a connected system of bioenergetic healing centers on every continent. No injured horse will ever be too far from help. No person with healing abilities will ever have to hide their gift or face exploitation." The audience erupted in applause, but Sarah wasn't finished. "And this is just the beginning. Our research has shown that the principles we've discovered in equine healing have applications far beyond what we initially imagined. The energy networks we can create, the healing environments we can establish, they're showing promise in helping all species, including humans." Dr. Hayes, now a leading researcher in healing sensitivity, stood up to share the latest findings. The monitoring systems they had developed were revealing patterns in healing energy that suggested revolutionary possibilities for the future of medicine. "But we never forget where this journey began," Sarah continued, glancing at Thunder's image on the screen. "With one injured horse, one desperate attempt to help, and one discovery that changed everything we thought we knew about healing." The young students from the center's first class were now teachers themselves, helping others discover and develop their gifts. The government agencies that had once sought to control healing abilities now worked to protect and support them. The pharmaceutical companies that had tried to patent healing techniques now funded research into understanding and enhancing natural healing processes. 5 years ago, I was just a girl who wanted to help a horse," Sarah concluded. "Today, We're a worldwide community of healers, researchers, and advocates, all working together to understand and share these gifts. The future of healing is not in keeping abilities secret or controlling them, but in recognizing that they belong to everyone who has the heart to help and the willingness to learn. As she stepped down from the podium, Sarah was embraced by her mother, by Dr. Blackwood and Rebecca, by all the people who had supported her journey from scared teenager to respected leader in a new field of veterinary science. "Your father would be so proud," Dr. Chen whispered, tears in her eyes. Later that evening, as the conference celebrations continued, Sarah slipped away to the local stables where Thunder was being housed. In the quiet of the barn, she placed her hands on his neck, feeling the familiar energy flow between them. "We did it, old friend," she murmured. "We showed them all what was possible." Thunder nickered softly, and in that moment, Sarah felt connected not just to him, but to every horse she had ever helped, every healer she had taught, every life that had been touched by the gift she had helped bring into the light. The future stretched out before her, full of possibilities she had never imagined that first day at Silver Creek. But one thing remained constant: the pure joy of connection, the simple power of healing, and the knowledge that she had helped create a world where such gifts could flourish openly, helping animals and humans alike discover the extraordinary potential that lay within them all. As she left the stable that night, Sarah smiled at the thought of all the young healers just beginning their journeys, all the horses yet to be helped, all the discoveries yet to be made. The girl who had whispered to horses had become the woman who had helped change the world, one healing touch at a time.